I know that everybody here has been watching Saratoga Live diligently when you're not at the track on MSG2, Fox Sports 2, and you unfortunately had to see me with Tom. Tom Amoss. Let's give Tom a big hand. Sorry, Tom.
That's going to be hard to follow up. Javier is one of the best jockeys in the country, and his resume is a lot more attractive than mine. But I'll do my best.
Are you having fun here in Saratoga this summer?
Oh, yeah. Saratoga's the best. I've been here a bunch. Actually, my first Saratoga was as an assistant trainer back in 1986. I just got married in March, and I was an assistant trainer for John Paracella. We had a lot of good horses back then, and John hired me sight unseen. And so I came up here. I was the last guy to leave Belmont in the barn because I had to get all the horses out. And I got up here with my wife. I was the last guy to get a room in the house. So our room had no doors. We had curtains on either side, and there was 12 of us living in the house. And my wife, Colleen, got to be a teller here at Saratoga, which was actually a great experience for her. So, we're back here now, and I've made a few trips back on occasion. This is really a special place, and I know it's been said 1,000 times, but it's very true. Really, when you walk into Saratoga, you step back in time, and it's about racing. It brings you back to the days when I was a kid handicapping. I hadn't started working at the track yet. I was only about 12 or 13, but I was already handicapping. And when the fairgrounds, I'm from New Orleans, when the fairgrounds would open, I couldn't wait for the form to come out. And I just anticipated it. And that leaves you after a while. You get used to it. But you come back here, and it feels like the old days.
Yeah, I agree. You can't wait to open. I can't every day. I'm looking forward to looking at the PPs, but I agree. Up here is special. You came here in '83. I think was the first time, and that was. Were you working in racing at that point?
Oh yeah. I'd been working in racing. I started my first job in racing was when I was in high school. I was 15 in New Orleans. You could drive a car at 15, and nobody was driving me out to the track at 4:30 in the morning. So I was working during the Christmas holidays as a hot walker for Jack Vanberg. It was supposed to be a 2-week gig. I made it 9 days, and I just couldn't do it. The days were too long, and the dream didn't die, but it left for a while, and then it came back, and I continued to work through high school and college. When I graduated from college, I came to the track full time, which was '83.
And so you worked with assistant trainers. You worked for John Paracella. I knew he was crazy. I can't believe he's actually hired you. If you know John, he's one of the great characters at the racetrack. When did you go out on your own as a trainer?
1987. I was on my own, and I had a very, very small stable at Sportsman's Park. And my next stop was Thistle Downs, and the gal that was working for me is the one that told me that Paracella was looking for an assistant trainer, and John's name was in the Blood Horse every week. And I thought, wow, I'm really going to learn from one of the best. So I spent a year as assistant, and then I went out on my own again in 1988, and that's when I became a trainer.
And that was a good time. John had all those horses for Ted Sabrizi back then, right?
Oh, yeah.
Pine Tree Lane, a lot of very good horses.
I'll tell you a good story about Pine Tree Lane. So John was never flush with cash, always needing cash because he liked to bet. And he had 2 fillies in the barn, and one was Pine Tree Lane, and he decided to sell one to Wayne Lucas. And he decided to sell Pine Tree Lane because, in his words, she couldn't get a route of ground. And he was right. She couldn't get a route of ground. But she did win the Breeders' Cup Sprint after he sold her to D. Wayne Lucas. And to make matters worse, when I came to work for him, I had to bring something to his house one time, and John lived on Pine Tree Lane. So every night that he went home, he had that staring him in the face.
I'll tell you funny, it's not usually about me, but back when I first moved to New York, the first OTB in New York City that got video was the John Street OTB, which is down in the Wall Street area. If you work down there, and I was working down there, I spent more time there than I did at my job. But back then, it was the winter of '85, I think. And you got to realize back then, it wasn't like now. There's no simulcast. It was all New York money. So the odds didn't change like they do now. So I'm at the OTB, and there's this maiden race coming up, and good racing in the winter time. And Paracella's got Pine Tree Lane there, and she was 7-1 as they were going to the gate. And I saw her drop in the last flash to 9-2, and I thought, ugh, I've been had. And she just galloped Pine Tree Lane. She was a very, very good horse. I think those guys really used to bet.
Oh yeah, and the whole time I was working for him, that was a big part of it. Believe me.
So, who was the first top horse that you had? And
the first top horse that I had, well, by Saratoga standards, it had to be Heritage of Gold. She won the Grade 1 Go for Wand here. That was the year that Beautiful Pleasure was the top filly in the country. We were competing for year-end honors. I beat her here. I'll never forget that day, as it can happen in Saratoga. It poured down rain, and the track was. We were worried about the condition of the track as it pertained to the health of our horse. And the owner left it in my hands. Do you want to run? Don't you want to run? And I went back and forth all morning on it, watched a few races, made the decision to run, and it ended up being my first Grade 1 stakes win. So thank God we did.
Yeah, she won 2 grades. She won the Diana as well on the turf here.
She won the Diana, she won the Go for Wand, she won the Apple Blossom in Oakland, another Grade 1. So the Diana, that wasn't a Grade 1 yet. No. I know it is now, but it wasn't then. But she won a lot of good races, and I inherited her. She was actually trained by Steve Asmussen, and the guy that owned her was a crazy guy that I trained for once before. And Steve had won a good race with her. This was the year before she won the Go for Wand. But he won a good race with her out of town, and the owner had told Steve not to move the filly from Delaware Park. He was going to decide what he wanted to do with her, and Steve shipped her back to Kentucky where he was. When the owner found out, he fired Steve and hired me.
Now, did she bring you to Saratoga, or were you already coming here?
No, she brought me to Saratoga, for sure.
And did you come to Saratoga? You don't come here that often, right? I mean, you're shipped in, but you don't race here in the summer.
Look, one thing in horse racing is you try to put your horse in the best spots. And you don't want to bring a knife to a gunfight. And I brought a slingshot to a gunfight. I think the rubber band's probably broken on my slingshot, but anyhow, here I am.
Have you been in town all week, or have you been traveling to the many various places that your horses are running?
So we base a lot of horses out of Churchill Downs. My circuit is Fairgrounds in the winter and Churchill in the summer. And we branch out from Churchill when the meet's not going on. Do a lot at Indiana Grand, which is a track about 150 miles from Churchill Downs. And so this is the first time I've been back to Saratoga with a group of horses in just about 7 or 8 years.
So how did you get into broadcasting? And you worked for TVG as well as ESPN?
I did. TVG was starting a new show called The Works, and it was centered around the Kentucky Derby, and the idea was to show video of the horses preparing for the Derby, and then have analysts come on TV and describe what the horses are doing and actually critique their works, their workouts. So it was a great show, but it was my first foray into racing. I was terrible. I mean, my information was good, but I was not very comfortable on camera. But it got better over time. ESPN picked me up for a few shows. I was, again, not very good. Andy makes me better. Other than that, I don't know.
His competition's weak over here. So now you're actually being a little unkind. You were very popular, and I remember I never got TVG. We just didn't get it in New York City, so I couldn't really watch it. But I knew a lot about you, and you were pretty outspoken. Did you get in some situations that were a little dicey with people being upset about that?
I'll never forget the Chicago Breeders' Cup. And Andy's got great memory, so what year would that have been?
02.
So in the 02 Breeders' Cup, I had made a comment on one of Baffert's horses, and he pulled me aside the next day, and he was very polite, but very firm, and he said, "You know, Tom, you got to remember that these owners that are watching this show, the next call they're going to make after you say something is to the trainer." And what I said about Baffert's horse, and I don't remember the exact words, was accurate. But there's a way to say it, and so Bob let me know I need to find a better way to say it. Still say the same thing. Yeah. So of course, I got in the hot water.
Well, I heard you were getting in trouble, and I thought to myself, this is a guy I want to work with. So I thought, here's a guy who doesn't mind. I mean, at the end of the day, yes, obviously we never want to be unfair, and you never want to say something that's unfair. On the other hand, we don't work for the trainers. We work for the bettors, for the people who bet, and our job is to give them the best information we can. It doesn't mean we still have to do it in a fair way, but we're not supposed to be sitting up there worrying about a trainer being upset as long as we're fair.
That's exactly right. Look, I do not pick favorites. Of course, I certainly have guys that I'm more comfortable with or like better than other guys, but I never let that enter my thought when I'm examining a horse or talking about a race. I'm trying to analyze the race as best I can, and I'm doing it for someone that's looking to make a bet on the race. Outside of that, nothing comes into play.
Yeah, I agree, and it's listen. You don't want to. And listen, sometimes trainers you're friendly with, But if you can't occasionally knock one of your friends' horses, then you can't knock people you may be less friendly with.
Well, no doubt about it. I mean, if you're that thin-skinned in this business where if you win 20% of the time you're doing well, then you're in the wrong business. I mean, and the business needs to be more transparent, Andy. I mean, what we're doing in the mornings with the workouts and how they show up and everything that's in the form, there's more and more information every year. Social media has brought the horses to the fans a lot more than ever before. I can remember when I was in high school in the 70s and the Kentucky Derby would come around, the only information I could get was maybe a clip on Good Morning America that was up at Churchill Downs covering the race. Nowadays, you can get it 24/7, and I think that's really wonderful.
No, I agree. It gives us an opportunity to bring it to people. It's just, it's like, I think so much of what we do, I mean, obviously, the beauty of Saratoga is that everybody comes to Saratoga and they enjoy what we have here, and it's a very special place. But during the year, I imagine a lot of people here. You play the horses, but you do it from home a lot of the time. We have a large virtual attendance, and sometimes I think that gets ignored.
I'm new to it. My kids both graduated from LSU in broadcast journalism and have been telling me about Twitter and what I need to be doing. And I didn't start doing anything like that till March, but I was really enlightened as to what that can do for you. And I don't just mean for you, I just mean for the racing itself. And look, we're nothing without the people that come to the races and place a bet. That's what everything's derived from. Purses are derived from that. So without that, horse sales don't go well. I mean, it's a cyclical effect. So it's very, very important, and I think it's been neglected for a long, long time, that the fans are treated well. I will say this year at Saratoga, I heard a public service announcement opening day when we were getting ready to do our first show from Chris Kay of the NYRA, and he said, we want this to be a great experience for the fans. I've never seen that at a racetrack before. And he backed those words up. They brought in Songbird and put more into the purse so she would come. You got to see a fabulous racehorse run, at least in my opinion.
No, I think she is, Tony.
Yeah.
We'll discuss this in a second.
Yeah, and so I think that the word is finally gotten out, that the fans are the most important aspect of our game, more important than any other participants.
I couldn't agree more. No, the disagreement on Songbird has nothing to do with you and I. Tony Alavato, we work with. Tony talked to me about this today. Tony wanted... We were talking about picking Songbird and whether or not I was going to pick her in the Alabama. And I said, Tony, and he wasn't asking me to be disingenuous. I said, well, I'll probably pick her, but I'm not going to tell you 3 weeks in advance about a race that hasn't been drawn. I am prone to pick against 1 to 5 shots sometimes, so I can't make that promise. And somehow he seems to think that means I don't like her. I think Songbird is a tremendous filly. I think it's just great that she's here to race. And I mean, this is what Saratoga is supposed to be about.
No doubt. And I mean, it's not just Songbird. I mean, it really, the racing here on any given day is great. I can't tell you how many times you turn to a race that we like to call a first level allowance race, which is designed to be for horses that have just broke their maiden and a stepping stone to bigger races. And here at Saratoga, a race like that, has the likes of, graded stakes placed horses and just crazy entries that you would never see anywhere else. And it's just it's a real attribute to what Saratoga is. It's the place to be.
Which is why, I guess, when you actually win a race, why it feels so special, because you don't get lucky to win races in Saratoga.
No, you don't. I'm still waiting for my first one this year.
The first one in many years, but I don't really want to pick on Tom since he's a guest on the show. When was your last winter in Saratoga?
Shoot. It's been a long time. It's been a long time between drinks. It's been a very long time between drinks. But I will tell you this: I haven't been here in a long time either.
Well, the good news is that the guests that we have on the show have historically ended up doing very well. So I think you have a horse in on Sunday or Monday that actually looks like it's got a real shot. So
well, I'm glad you think so.
I'm not going to pick it, but it looks like it's a shot. Tom Amoss, thanks a lot. Let's give Tom a big hand.